welcome to CSM Mistakes Were Made. In today's video, you're going to see how I cranked some socks for my daughter's boyfriend, Joey. And he's very sock worthy. He's a very nice young man. I know that he likes the color purple. And so these socks I thought would be perfect for him because they're cranked out of some very purple dominant sock yarn from Earth Yarns. And made a couple other videos about earth yarns and how they have in the colorways that I've been attracted to, they have stripes that are kind of hard to match, and in fact I would say impossible to truly match because this earth yarn is hand-dyed yarn. Now this is complicated by the fact that this particular section of the 1 pound cone that I was cranking from gave me 2 pretty good sized knots in within a couple of yards, and the first one I ended up having to frog the sock, and I believe it happened in the upper part of the sock very early on in this cuff down sock. The second one happened in the same area on the second sock. I was able to catch it before it got incorporated into the sock cuff. So this is the one that I'm trying to match, and you'll see how I go about trying to crank a swatch where I can try to identify where the match will be for the second sock. Now here's the second sock, and you'll see a better representation of this in the video where I attempted to try to find where the stripes match up. They didn't ever really match up great, but I believe, and again you'll see this a little bit better in the actual video, but I believe we got a pretty good match. I wanted to also share that the cuff, this has been washed and blocked. The cuff on this particular sock had a drop stitch that went into the selvage. These are not that hard to repair with the type of selvage, Juana selvage I did, and I'll link a little video I did on how to repair those drop stitches. In this particular case, the drop stitch went into the selvage, and then it caught up with itself, so I was able, the rest of the sock was fine. I didn't have to latch hook down. By the time I saw that, we were well into the heel, and so basically running a stitch all the way down to catch a drop stitch here, and then rebuilding it all the way back up didn't appeal to me, so I did it in post, as they say. So I'll leave a link in the description for that video about how to repair a drop stitch that goes into the selvage after you get it off the machine. There was some tinking in this video. I had inadvertently left a needle in work that I should have taken out of work, and anyway, I'm showing how to tink. It's just undoing stitches, and on a circular sock machine. It has to be done in a methodical manner, and it's stitch by stitch, so it takes some time, but I think the results are well worth it because you avoid having to recrank the entire sock. So I hope you enjoy the video. Thanks for watching. This is another knot. Well, at least I'm seeing this well before it actually hits the yarn carrier, so I will cut out that knot. Let's crank forward, and then I'll do a faux Russian join after I cut the knot out. Okay, we need scissors. We're going to do some surgery. We will cut the knot just at the knot. We back feed this little end, creating a loop with the end, and sometimes I try to stick it in a needle that's kind of closed, and then I think I got it actually. And if I crank forward a little bit, that anchors it right there. And I'll just hold on to the rest of it and we'll be off to the races. We are at 14, 16, 17. I'm going to stop at 20. I've got everything set so that I can put my spring on the spring rest, swap out needles. 5x1. My landmarks are, in case people wonder, this is needle number 1. Rubber needles here and here will be swapped out, so I'll get a nice 5x1 ribbing. All right, now that we've got all the rubber needles that we need swapped out, we can do however many rows of 5x1 ribbing we want. I'll stop at 70. And normally when I stop to do anything, I usually stop at 6 o'clock. So here's 3 and 6, 12 and 9. Normally stopping at 6 o'clock, but with this exception, I stop right after my counter goes to 70 so that I can swap out the front needles. And I almost overshot it. So I want to keep this part open so that I can swap out 7 of these needles to make a smooth back of the heel for the pre-heel, and this will be the part of the sock that will be the sole of the sock. So it's, people don't want to walk on ribbing. All right, so we're swapping all of these out. We'll do a 10-row pre-heel. And we'll get this one way over here. I kind of let all the needles hang out until I'm ready to put them into the slot for the cylinder. Get the easy ones and the harder ones. And then these over here. Okay. Reset the counter to get 10 pre-heel rows. Now, decision time. Do I want to go to the effort of taking my ribber off so I can see what I'm doing when I'm doing a heel? I think there's a great advantage to being able to see what you're doing. It does take time. You have to take out these needles from their slots, put them in temporary parking, remove the ribber. It is my preferred way because I like to see what I'm doing. And I think it's a lot easier to put heel forks in when you can see what you're doing. So let's do it that way. So as I said, I put the 5 remaining ribber needles in short-term parking, and then I gently kind of let them hang by their little necks. I've never lost a needle. It looks dangerous to do this, but I've never lost a needle doing it this way. They're safe. So when I do my heel, they're out of the way. They don't get in the way. I'm going to do a +2 deep heel for my daughter's boyfriend. I think that's my default heel. All right, landmarks This is the back half, this is the front half. I'm going to build my heel on the front half of the machine with 2 extra needles in work on each side. I'm going to put my heel spring on. I'll lift these 2 together, and then these 2 together, lower them together, and lower these together. And then we'll keep going. Last one on the right, last one on the left. We don't do the very last one that we used initially because we want to avoid a hole. I think I'll leave the heel spring on. I always think about the recipient when I decide. Heel spring, of course, tightens the fabric a little bit. I've already got some ribbing that should tighten it, but I think this for the foot will be just a nicer fit for Joey. So we'll keep the heel spring on. I made a mistake. I didn't put my rubber back on. Before I started doing the foot, what I should have done, of course, is put my rubber needles back in short-term parking and then reload them onto the rubber. I did 2 rows. You can see the little threads there. And the thing I want to do is just hand knit them up and then put them in short-term parking. So I only got 5 of them, I think, so this should work. We'll hand knit these with the actual needles, and this one is a little challenging, so I might actually have to lift the stitch onto this. It's kind of tight, and it's a little tiny needle that I could easily drop. So that should work. Put that in short-term parking. This one I still can do, but I think I'll have to certainly crank forward to do the other ones, which is no big deal. But let's get the ones we can, and then move the yarn carrier forward. Okay, so 3 are safe. These are not yet. So maybe I can do this without having my pick tool in the other hand. Nope, it's just so awkward because the darn needle is so teeny. Okay, open that latch, put that on, stuff it down there. Should be the last one, and then we'll put the rubber on. Take the spring off to get these loosened and then out. And then the first one you place after you do this is the most critical because you want it to be aligned. So I use my hand to hold the rubber dial where I think it should be, and then they kind of do want to find their spots. So I'm going to grab that loop and put it on. Open the latch, grab the loop, put it on, slide it in. Open the latch, grab the loop, put it on and slide it in. And then, see, sometimes, yeah, there's often this one I forget because it's hidden by the rubber arm. Okay, so we've got them all here. All right, so we have, I think, successfully managed a mistake, an unforced error, if you will. I think we're good. We're going to continue on. We're at 2 rows of what I think will probably be about 70 or 75. with ribbing on the top of the foot. I'm going to do 74. I'm going to add +1 of stockinette so that I can graft stockinette stitches to stockinette stitches. And then I think I'm going to put the toe on the back half of the machine because striped yarn, I think, often, not always, but often looks better when you can get a graft, the Kitchener graft, under the foot rather than on top of the foot. You run a risk of grafting unrelated stripes. And I've done it both ways, of course, and this is a little bit of an extra hassle because, number one, the biggest hassle for me when I do a toe on the back half of the machine is the heel weights. Managing the heel weights is a challenge. All right, so I've just swapped out the rubber needles for cylinder needles, left them in the half net position. Now I'm going to do one round and stop up here. Actually, it's plus 1.5 round because I'm stopping up here. I'm going to lift these out of work. Lift all of these out of work here. So heel spring is on. I'm going to crank a row and lift the needle. Crank a row. And lift the needle. Oh no. My guess is almost everybody who's watching this video saw this before I just did, but maybe stating the obvious, but when I lifted all these needles out of work, I didn't lift that one out of work, so I kept working. So I've kind of built up how many rows I can usually tell here. Let's see. 1, 2, ooh, a lot of rows. I have a choice. I could start my sock over or try to tink back. Now, my calculus takes into account whether or not I have a lot of other errors that I'm, going to be sad about. When I get the sock off the machine, will I be looking at it and say, oh, geez, I had that error and that error? No, I'm pretty happy with this sock. Even that weird mistake we had when I didn't remember to put the rubber back on, I'm kind of motivated to tink back. Now, so you'll need to set yourself up before you actually start tinking. And one of the things you may need is to lift some needles out of work so that you can put the yarn carrier where it won't get into mischief. Well, when you're doing a heel or a toe, you already have some of those up out of work. Then you're going to need to take the yarn out of the yarn carrier because that's your tool to get the stitches to undo. Finally, it pays to remove the weights. Here you can see I'm taking the yarn out of the yarn carrier and those needles are already raised. And before you start, it's really a good idea to take the heel weights off and actually the stem weights too. It's much easier to do tinking without weights on. When that's ready, all you do is you take the yarn on the inside of the cylinder and pull it up over the needle to load that previous stitch on. And it's not too hard to do. You can see in this video, basically it comes right off. There were 7 rows that I had to undo, and I think it took me about 7 minutes. When you struggle, it's because the yarn isn't squarely in front of the needle, so get that yarn right in the middle and it should pull off pretty easily. So we continue on and back and forth and back and forth, and here I wanted to show when you come to a needle that is open like this, and I don't know how it happened. You actually have to take a little time and put the yarn above the latch, and it's a good investment because the next time you come to that needle, it'll come off just fine. If you don't deal with it, you will always encounter some problems. Here you can see that I've encountered the first couple of stitches that got stuck on that needle that was in work. And I thought, well, I'll just go ahead and take things off now. And unfortunately, I dropped it. So, not a big deal, but I think it's always smart to catch it before it goes too far. And then if you can't deal with it right away, secure it. And I did that with a stitch marker. And that allows me to worry about it another day, like Scarlett O'Hara. So I continue my tinking back and forth, back and forth. So I continue tinking, and you can see now I'm coming up to an edge stitch. So I'm coming up to a raised needle that I put out of work when I was doing this toe. You need to drop it down, of course, so you can tink it, but that same problem exists where you have to get that latch below the loop of thread so that it will tink properly. So I think it's right about here I discovered that I'm done with my tinking. And now it's time for us to deal with this dropped stitch. The machine has no weights on it at this point, and you need a little weight on to help you secure the stitch. So I'm doing that right now. I actually use the needle itself to do the latching. So I aim low. I aim for a loop that's well below the loop, the last loop that's live. And I just use my pick tool when I need to, but I just latch it right on up. Not too hard to do. And once it's fully rebuilt, I put the needle back into the cylinder and we are off to the races. Okay, so I've already lifted the one on the left. Now I'm going to load the yarn carrier and lift this one on the right, which is lifted. We're going to carefully crank forward and lift one over here, and we're on our way. Okay, lower this one. You start getting extra vigilant right when you're about at the end. Every little potential problem is a worry, and you don't want to worry at this point. So we cut the yarn. So we'll take the yarn carrier around to about 3. Okay, I think that's good. I'm gonna crank over here and then lower these down. Just go slow and we're good. Okay, let's get the weights off. All right, so we started with Juana's cast on with 2 out rows. It gives us a nice rolled edge, 20 rows of 1 by 1. We swapped to 5 by 1. We did a pre-heel of 10 rows. The heel. Started the foot before I realized that I needed to put my ribber back on. So I think it worked out okay. It worked out okay. We figured it out. Now, as we said, we built this toe on the back of the machine. So it was sort of like this, back and forth, because the graft will be located on the bottom of the foot where it will be less jarring in theory. And maybe I can fold that so you can see what we're dealing with. Many times I've found, especially with this yarn for some reason, I think the graft would have been just fine on the top of the foot. This is going to be the top of the foot, and because of the short rows, the fields of, in this case, this purple stripe become really kind of a block of purple because we did short rows in there. But anyway, I don't think there's a perfect answer, so I'm pretty happy with this sock. Thanks for sticking with me through all that tinking. So as you can see, I started out with a little bit of this pretty purple, light purple into gray, charcoal, etc., all the way down. And then it made a switch here. And then we ended at kind of a darker purple and a very dark plum. So what I need to do is crank a swatch of the next part of this yarn and see if I can find where I can begin this one. And as I've shown in other videos about this yarn, it's very hard to tell because you have to keep your eyes peeled for little distinctive markings. And sometimes because it's hand-dyed yarn, those distinctive markings are so distinctive that they aren't repeated. But let's see what we can do. I've already set my machine up with all my 72 needles. I do need to put a row of ravel cord in so that I can easily separate everything out. This is definitely going to be frogged. So let's get that in. So we start with some of this beautiful dark purple and all right, so I can detect a little bit of this teal color in here. Interestingly, before the teal on this particular sock came some kind of lime green, and there is none of that. So I think we might be dealing with a situation that we won't get matching socks. They'll be matchy enough. Let's go a little farther. So now we're well into the teal. So I would say possibly here. Teal, and then, okay, and then it goes into this really pretty lime green. Okay, so I think I'm okay with cranking off and then doing a comparison. So we take the yarn out of the yarn carrier, we take weights off, and we crank off. Pull it up through. Here's the original sock. Here is the swatch. So we kind of try to line it up here. And maybe this is it, or maybe more like this, or maybe even one farther down. Let's just do one test about this one here. The darn stockinette just rolls, doesn't it? Okay, and then we'll come up through this. Well, So the vibrancy of the green matches up really well here. But that does not match at all well. So I think I'm gonna use this match, which means that I need to take about that much yarn and start this sock about right here. And I'll put a little clippy marker in to tell me where to stop winding off. And then this will be row 1 of the next sock. And not a perfect match, but I think it's fair to say that it's not needing to be perfect in the sense that hand-dyed yarn is hand-dyed, and it isn't perfect. So I'll wind off all this. I'll use this for scrappy socks or something else later. That is what we'll do. I'll be back when I wind this up. Now I'm going to load my newly cut yarn, and we'll start Juana's cast on and do a crew sock selvage with 2 out rows, and we'll crank 3/4 of the way around. Grab the ribber. So I have to reach around and grab a handful of these. I have a video on how to do this cast on. I'll put a link. And a lot of explanation about where to begin and end so that you get a nice looking selvage. I'll be doing that, and I guess I can still explain it as I'm going. One by one cast on. It's a very nice cast on. It's automatically locked by virtue of the anatomy of the stitches. I wish I knew exactly why, but it doesn't matter because it simply is locked. And you can go into any other pattern you like right after you lock this first row in. So it's a go-to selvage for me. You have to be friends with your ribber, of course. That's the one rub for some people. I think it really just takes a commitment to get your ribber to do what you want it to do, and sometimes you have to consult experts about tweaking the tension of the ribber or the timing of the ribber. And I was fortunate to have a lot of good advice when I was learning the ribber. But I will not deny that there were some, well, maybe not tears. I don't think I was that emotional about it, but I just, you know, you feel like pitching your machine off a cliff when it just won't do what you want it to do. And these old antique machines are tricky because they have idiosyncrasies. People who just want to hit the ground running with a ribber that has already been timed at the factory would possibly do themselves a favor by just buying a brand new machine. That wasn't something I considered at the time I bought this one 3.5 years ago. I kind of thought I knew I wanted an old cast iron machine. I think that just filled the bill for me, and the price point was good. So the new machines, especially when it's your first machine and you don't really know if the investment is justifiable, it is widely known that most of the time the machines hold their value quite well. So you might not get exactly what you paid for a new machine, but you'd get pretty close, especially if it's a machine where there's a waiting list and people don't want to wait. And especially, I guess the other thing is if it's local and you can buy it, or sell your machine to somebody who's close by and you don't have shipping costs, which can be so horrendous these days. One more rubber needle. I'll crank around a little bit. Let's get that in there. Okay, so we'll do 2 out rows. These needles have knitted once. The rubber needles have knitted once. These have not yet. So we're going to try to get all of the rest of them up to here knitted once, which means I need to pay attention to where this landmark is relative to the last rubber needle and the last cylinder needle, somewhere in here, somewhere before needle number 1. I want to stop the forward progress of the rubber. So I slow down, I kind of tappy tap tap forward, and I'm pretty happy with that. I'd set my rubber out of work. These needles need to knit once, so they jut out for the yarn. This needle won't go into work because it responds to the out of work setting. So those needles that knitted once are going to take a day off, 2 days off actually. And now we will bring it right back around to the same landmark, put everything back into work, reset the counter, and do 20 rows of 1 by 1. All right, we bring this spring rest around to this upper quadrant of the cylinder so that we can swap needles out to be 5 by 1 ribbing. Okay, we'll get the last one in over here. I swap out anything that's within 2 needles of where I'm going to be doing the heel. It's always a good kind of rule of thumb. Now we'll put this back. I think for the sake of interest maybe in how to do a heel with the rubber on, I'll leave the rubber on for this one. What goes into my decision about whether I want to leave a rubber on or off for the heel is how badly do I need to see inside, and especially if I know that there are mistakes that I need to fix. This is the time to fix them. But I don't know of any mistakes. I feel like it's going well, and we'll get it done. Speaking of mistakes, I just jinxed myself. I think you can see that. Okay, well, in this case, it obviously caught up with itself. It looks like it was a rubber stitch. It did go down into the selvage, but I know how to correct those now. What I'll do is take a tool after it's off, latch it all the way up, and then inevitably there's a gap between the first healthy stitch that we come to and the end of this latched column, and we'll end up just putting a duplicate stitch there. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it did surprise me. It surprised me to see that. I'm going to put weights up a little high because they were starting to get in danger of bottoming out. Important when you do a heel with the rubber on to take the pin out because this will stay stationary. The rubber tappet plate. So we'll lift the rear needles out of work, just like we did for sock number 1. I think I've got 2 more to lift out of work. So I've kept 2 needles in on both sides for a slightly deeper heel. It certainly isn't a very deep heel. And I'll need the heel spring on. Okay, I think we're set. All right, I should be getting a little worried because this is about as far as you can generally go without putting in heel forks. I'm grabbing the knitting underneath and kind of pushing it forward, but I don't think I need to tempt fate any more than necessary. So one of the things that's hard for me is to know if I've actually grabbed the knitting with both of the tines. All right, I need to lift this needle. I'm observing with each pass whether the knitting is riding up, and so far so good. I'm glad that it's not, but I also know that things can happen in the flash of an eye. So I'm going to move my heel forks up. I lifted these two on this side so I can get a rounded heel. Lifted these two on this side, same reason. Lower them together. Lower these together. Make sure that latch is opened. And then we'll be doing these increases one needle at a time. Well, can't really always take for granted that the needle latch will stay open while you're doing this. This is my very favorite way of doing a heel. I don't know what the old antique manuals called it, but it relies on the careful placement of the needle itself in a half knit position with the yarn sort of in the armpit of that, the latch and the body of the needle, so that the latch can actually do its job by bringing the new yarn over the top and knitting a new stitch. Okay, we're getting to the halfway points where I'm going to definitely want to do that one and this one. But now there's two that I've had left in work, but I'm only going to increase on that side and this side, and then I'm done. I don't put this back into work until I lower all of them for the foot. So now I'm moving this little tappet plate. It's not knitting anything because there's no rubber needles here for one thing, but I need to move it so that I can put this pin back in. And now that drive pin is in, and we are set to go on our merry way with the foot. Everything's good. My heel spring's on. My counter's redone. Okay. We're 52 rows into a foot, and I just happened to glance down to see that this needle has a loop right there that didn't knit. Well, that should be a stitch, and the one under it should be on its way into the cylinder. Most people know how to do this. I go under the loop, and I'm going to flip this over the top. And we're 52, 74. We're swapping the ribbon needles for cylinder needles so that we can graft stockinette to stockinette. So let's get that one, and then that one we'll be able to pull the ribbon off. It's all good news. No drop stitches that I can see. All right, we've got the heel spring on. We're going to crank the toe on the back half of the machine. We will go ahead and do that. Crank a row, lift the needle. Now we do these two down together. Sneak up on the latches. These two down together. Okay, one more to do on this side. One more to do on this side, and then we lower this one and this one together for the last pass. Breathe a sigh of relief. Take the yarn off, put it in the center of the cylinder. Grab some waste yarn, and then we'll crank this off and have a look and see if it meets our expectations. We don't want to get too far because we do have to push these down into work. They're going back to work just for a short time so we can get this waste yarn in. Okay, pinchy from below. Crank off. See what we've got here. All right, so we were in search of a match. Did we get a match? Okay, so far, so good. So far, I mean, again, that actually matches up pretty well. And I think we did pretty well for the heels. Not perfect. When a sock first comes off the machine, it's really long and it does constrict a little bit, but look at the difference. It's about an inch difference. And let's take a look at the foot. Okay, same thing. The foot on this top one is a bit longer naturally. Okay, well, you know, I'm okay with this. I think we have not achieved full matchiosity, but that is a very high standard to reach when you're talking about hand-dyed yarn. So I do think these are quite acceptable. Thank you so much for watching.